about current issues. Some of the pushback that we got from the businesses, we have people coming, through our business or bothering our customers, doing all kinds of things that are troublesome, disruptive, and so we said, well, that's probably people that are also causing issues at the Community of Hope, so let's house them instead. So let us take care of that. But if, we argued, like, the people that are in the camp are the ones that are there, that are wanting to follow rules, that want to be on that property. They're not the ones that are out roaming around or sleeping behind your building. So having a camp would bring more people into Community of Hope than at your building. And so we really argued for that point and tried to mitigate that as best we could. Again, we couldn't be homeless police, but if we knew who the person was, we'd be happy to have a conversation, because sometimes that's really all it took. We found that you don't have to have punitive measures for every accident or thing that occurs with somebody who is living on the street. So just trying to find a way to have a conversation, to bridge that gap, to make businesses happy while also serving the people that you're there to serve. It really made a big difference. The businesses felt like they had somebody that they could contact if they were having issues, and I preferred that. Rather than calling the police, let's see if we can help with the situation. And that ended up being really helpful. We organized with the Las Cruces Gospel Rescue Mission to do a big trash pickup day. So we went around to some of the businesses, we picked up a lot of the trash, and we let them know who we were. And they were really grateful, and some of them even gave back. One of them was an ice cream shop. They gave drinks and stuff to everybody. And really, it's their trash that blows into the camp all the time. But we went and cleaned up their business. And then we found that really the camp residents were regulating each other. It really was sort of under a microscope. I think everybody was waiting for it to fail, waiting for something to happen. It's one of those things where you hold your breath a little bit, right? Are we doing the right thing? Is this what we should do? But again, it was better than doing nothing. People needed a safe place to sleep. We needed to try this. We needed to see if we could make it work. What we found was it was the best neighborhood watch. I did a police report study. I counted how many calls that we had to the Community of Hope property before we started the camp, and then a year in, I did another count on how many calls, and the calls had gone way up, and I was like, oh no, shoot, this didn't work how I thought it was going to work. But as I started to look at what the calls were, they were calling because people were coming around or sneaking around the camp at night trying to get in to the camp. And so they would call in all this suspicious behavior. They were also calling on a lot of people for behavioral things. In the past, it was every man to himself, or, oh, that person's having an episode, like just walk away. Watch your back. And having the camp, people were like, oh, Susie's not having a good day, like something is going on, like we should maybe see if she needs an ambulance call, or somebody seems like they're just having a traumatic incident. So they were calling. We had a mobile crisis that was coming out, and a lot of times they would end up calling the police. It was really for people that were trying to get into the camp and that were having behavioral health issues. So they were just calling on a lot of things. And so then we were like, okay, we need to have a training on when's an appropriate time to call the police, as opposed to maybe calling in some social workers or Camp Hope staff, Community of Hope staff. And so that helped us to kind of guide our training so that they weren't calling police for every small detail. But it also told me what the difference in those calls had been, whereas before, again, it was for a lot of other things that were not as pleasant. And so we found that this was really helpful. We did decide that we wanted to have some paid security come around, and because we had several agencies there, they all bought in on sharing the cost of that. And so we found a company that would just come in unannounced 3 times during the night. And what that helped us with was securing the rest of the campus, because the city said you can only have people sleeping in the campus. The only way we're going to allow this. So if we would have started letting people sleep in other places again, we would have been right back at the beginning. We did not want to jeopardize having to shut down the camp. So we felt like if we did have some paid security, it took some of the onus off of the people experiencing homelessness, going to their peers and saying, hey, I know it's February and it's 11 o'clock at night, but you gotta beat it. That's kind of tough to do. Granted, we do have some trainings on how they can approach that situation, because sometimes they need to, sometimes they feel comfortable doing that. But if they don't, then instead of just calling the police, they can just call the security and say like, hey, can you help us move this person along? They always make sure that they're giving them whatever they need. They do have storage on site at Camp Hope, so they'll give them sleeping bag, they'll give them directions on places they know that they can go to camp. So that ends up being helpful, but it has been nice having the security come around as well to help back up any incident reports or things that might be happening instead of always calling police. So as we began Camp Hope, we immediately set up a security team, set up registration procedures, how are people going to enter the camp, how are we going to capture that, what kind of barriers, are we going to make this a high barrier, are we going to drug test, are we going to alcohol test? No, not at our camp. And again, I'm just telling you about what we decided to do and what has worked for our camp. So what we decided to do is we wanted to do something that had more of a harm reduction model. Yes, we definitely set up some rules. I know people call them different things. Here they're called practices. We call them agreements. But we decided in these great conversations with people staying at the camp what they thought the rules should be. And a lot of times you find that their rules want to be really, really strict. A lot more strict than maybe what our staff would make it. So we kind of made some compromises, because when you're making up those kinds of things, then who's going to enforce them? And you want to be enforcing all of these agreements or practices. So kind of keeping that in mind helped us to formulate what we wanted our agreements to be and what we thought we could follow up on. And it would still make it safe. Really the safety team, security team is just comprised of the camp manager, who is elected by the people at the camp and approved by the staff of the Community of Hope. They then look for an assistant camp manager who steps forward. And I can tell you one of the experience, since doing this since 2011, people always step forward. It's amazing to me. They're in crisis, they are homeless, they have a lot of other things to be doing, and there are still people that really shine and step up to fill these roles, and they feel like they belong. And our staff then meets with them, and other people who have said, like, no, I don't think I can handle being a camp manager, but I really want to help out. And so they do. They end up being part of this big safety team, so that they always have different people who can respond to situations, while other people are then focusing on what they need to be doing in their own lives. We decided that 50 would be our magic number. We have more than 50 people on the streets in Las Cruces, so it does not serve everybody who is on the streets. But at any given time, we have at least 35 to 45 people who are not sleeping downtown, who are not sleeping in business doorways, who are sleeping at the Community of Hope in Camp Hope. And we also do have the indoor mission across the street, so we try to refer as many people as we can to the mission, if that's an appropriate placement for them, rather than sleeping outside. So in the beginning, the City of Las Cruces gave a generous one-time startup grant of $10,000 that helped with getting the tents, sleeping bags, and starting up with the porta potties at the camp. From there, just want to talk a little bit about some of the partnerships that emerged. So we started to see a lot of people coming forward, people wanting to help, people that had really special niches, to do these projects for us. Some of them, the Doña Ana Community College Construction Club, they donated an office. It's kind of like a tiny home. And then we got Eagle Scout to put solar on top of that little Camp Hope office. There's always somebody at the Camp Hope office 24/7. That was one of the agreements we made with law enforcement and fire department, that we would always have somebody on duty. Any of the paid security then could check in with that person. Anybody dropping off donations, anybody coming in would see if something happened. They get trained in how to do incident reports. They turn those in. They all have walkie-talkies. They do rounds around the whole campus each night. And it helps us to make sure that we're keeping up our end of the bargain and having the camp. The construction club also decided that they wanted to start helping us put these 3-sided shelters with a roof around the tents, because tents aren't meant to be lived in. This helped prolong the life of all of the tents and tried to help with some additional just privacy. And it gets really, really windy in Las Cruces. Again, we do have some snow. We do have a rainy season that's really helped with that. So slowly but surely we've been adding those structures. We also have Home Depot helping with that. So Home Depot has grants that they can give every 6 months. And this particular grant, they fund the tent structures and come out and build them. They bring volunteers, tons of volunteers. And it's for veterans. So we have veterans that are coming through the camp. That's helped us to get that funding from Home Depot. So that's a building that I saw in this community. So just thought I'd throw that out there. We partnered with a lot of local churches. I joked about it, but really, we started a Google Calendar to try to keep track of which church was coming on which date to bring food for people who were staying at the camp. So that was really just a generous outpouring of people who were in churches who really felt like they finally had a way to give back, come provide food and donations. And we have tried to snag as many Eagle Scouts as possible. Don't do anything more at parks. Come to Community of Hope. We've got stuff for you. Then we also reached out to University Engineering Club, so they were really great. In the very beginning, we had to have the site plan through the city of Las Cruces. The planners were semi-helpful, semi-supportive. They didn't really go to college to do tent cities. I don't know who does, but I think it should be a thing now, and putting that out there. But they were really great. They came in, they did the surveying for us. They used people in the camp who had survey experience to help with that as well. They did a big drainage study for us. They helped us engineer the tent pad sites. They even came out and sponsored some of the tent pad sites. They have to do community service hours as part of their club as engineers at the university. So it's something to keep in mind, to an untapped resource there. And the City of Las Cruces Planning Department said that we had to use Bureau of Reclamation best practices for camping as we designed our tent pad sites, and so we did that. So they actually gave us 16 conditions to meet, and that was one of them was making sure that we put all of the tents up on tent pad sites. So we talked about this a little bit, about the safety team and the Camp Hope manager being elected. We looked into different ways into paying a camp manager, using maybe the model of a camp host, like you might see at some of the state parks. We kept not really finding a good way to do that in conversations with our auditors, and so what we ultimately decided on, and we also, because they're people experiencing homelessness, we really didn't want them to stay homeless, and so we try to move them on as well, make sure that they're getting into housing and that they have just as much opportunity as anybody else. So it sort of fluctuated with the sort of compensation that they would like. We've had some camp managers that have just said, give me a phone. Others have said, I'll take gift cards. And so that's really worked for us, using the gift cards and using a phone for people who are stepping into that role. We also have a lot of other gift cards. We'll get businesses that will donate them, or at Christmas time, we even do, like, when people ask at Christmas, what do you need? A lot of times we'll say gift cards, because that's really helpful. And then anytime you have big projects coming up, you get some of these leaders coming forward again, then you've got a way to help with that. We found that that's really worked well using gift cards. We meet weekly with that safety team, so I think that that's really important. So that's also, in addition to having those great conversations, that the great conversations are really with everybody in the camp, talking about what's happening in the camp, what's working, what's not working, who's not doing the dishes, who's not cleaning the bathroom. Really, that's kind of what it sounds like dorm life. It's actually kind of boring. You think it's going to be, but also at the same time, then the next week, you're talking about something that's been really difficult to deal with, somebody who's had, some behavioral health issues that has really affected a lot of people in the camp, and how do we accept that person into the camp, even though it might be disruptive. So talking about some real, boots on the ground and things that happen, drugs, coming through, how do we deal with that? Those are real conversations that we're really frank and transparent about at the camp, and make sure everybody's voices are heard, and that we're talking about that. And then in addition to that, we have the safety team meeting. So again, what are they finding as safety team members? What are the issues that are coming up for them? What kind of trainings do we think that they need? We've even brought in people from the university in the drama department who have constructed some sort of like role-playing things with harm reduction and trauma-informed care. We got to do a lot of role-play with our safety team in those situations, so better ways to learn how to respond. So a lot of, opportunities to bring in some experts and some out-of-the-box kind of trainings for people. And it also trains them, too. They were like, wow, we haven't done something like that here, and learning about homelessness in their own backyard was something that was life-changing for them as well. We do have walkie-talkies at the camp, and then we have some inside of the Community of Hope office, so we can have constant contact with people at the camp. The camp manager does sign a memorandum of understanding of their responsibilities, and then we provide as many training opportunities as we can. If they're interested in motivational interviewing, again, harm reduction or trauma-informed care trainings, then we open those up to them to go to those meetings. We've also had active shooter trainings. We've invited camp leaders to those trainings that we've had for Community of Hope staff. Here's some pictures. So there's the guard shack. You're looking at the side of it right now. It actually faces the Community of Hope backside. And so it can see everybody that's coming in and out of the camp, and that's the only entrance in and out of the camp. We do have a fence that surrounds the whole camp, and it does have openings, but we keep those closed. And so we just have this one point of entry. And then the big picture on the right, I took that just before we came out here, and it actually rained. But that is the safety team's schedule. So I can go out at any time, and along the left side, it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. Along the top, it's the 6-hour shifts that they have, and there's somebody's name in there. So I can see at any time who is on duty. So I always know who's on duty, or who isn't. I know this is really small, but I do have printouts for those that are going to want to have some of these. So this is the Camp Hope Manager Memorandum of Understanding. Just again, some of the things that we feel like we want to make sure are understood. The camp manager also, as they understand it, and they wanted to have on there in terms of compensation and support. I think that's been huge, is making sure that the camp managers, the safety team, that they all feel like they're really supported by the Community of Hope staff. We give them a direct line. They don't have to go sign in and then wait for 20 minutes for a caseworker. Like, they can come in and talk to Community of Hope staff quickly so that we can address any issues that might be at the camp. So how are we funding having staff there? This is Lacey. She's our Camp Hope manager. Initially, we started it with a Border Servant Corps volunteer. It was really affordable, but then they did away with that program. And so we're trying to figure out how we're going to do that full time. So again, I don't have anybody overnight at the camp. It is self-governing overnight. It is self-governing on the weekends. We do have on-call staff. In the beginning, I had calls all the time, for probably the first year, maybe 2. Do you guys have wood in here? I haven't had a call in a long, long time. They can't. I wouldn't, if it was still like that, I might have, a different job by now. But because, we feel like we have supported them, we've offered this opportunity, and really people ultimately can take care of themselves, just give them a little freedom to do so, and then support to do that, and it has been working. And so we want to make sure that we can